Imagine if there was a zip code that people live in, and essentially in many cases work in, kids go to school in, they stay in their little neighborhood in very many cases. Uh, those people have a little burst in COVID density. Now you tell them, okay, you're not allowed to go to the places in your own neighborhood anymore. We're shutting them all down. What are these people going to do, Corey?
They're traveling.
They're going to the next zip code.
Yeah.
So aren't we spreading in that sense?
I don't want to share someone else's thoughts. I want to create my own original thoughts. I want to create my own original solutions. I want to look at situations and come up with my own phrasing, my own words, and do it my way.
This is the Jon Taffer Podcast.
Shut it down!
I love the little shut it down at the end, Corey.
Yeah.
That little faint shut it down in the background. That actually came off the shut it down button, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Yeah. I love those shut it down buttons. We should just maybe give a few away. Why not?
Yeah,
we haven't talked about this before. So I'm sitting here. I'm still in my bus, everybody. I'm now in week 5, actually. Now, I've stayed in my bus. I've owned this bus for 5 years. And I had another bus before this one for, I think, 4 years or so. So I had these things for a long time. But I've never stayed in them 5 weeks in a row and sort of made it home like this. You know, Corey, I always spend 5 days somewhere, drive off, spend 5 days somewhere, drive off.
Right.
And I have a place I put it in the winter, but even there I never go for 5 weeks at a time. So this is the longest I've ever lived in my bus. And it's interesting and I got TV, I got a bed, I got a refrigerator, I got everything I want, so I'm not complaining. But, it's interesting when you're dealing with all of the sacrifices that we're dealing with during the last 7 months over COVID and everything. And here I am, I'm at this place, I'm parked in my bus. I really can't do much. I'm not going to go inside to too many businesses unless I really trust them these days. But it's interesting how now I not only have all these restrictions upon me, now I have these confines. I'm living in a space that's about 15 feet wide, right, with the slides out, and I guess about 35 feet long inside, something like that. Corey, you've been in here.
Yeah, it's nice.
And I'm living in here, though. I'm living in this tiny little space with my wife and my dogs, and we're doing okay. It's not so bad. But I got to tell you, Corey, being here in Georgia the past 5 weeks, I have been to Atlanta a bunch of times. As a consultant, I've done projects in Athens and some other areas of Georgia over the years, but I've never been in Georgia like this for 5 consecutive weeks. And man, I fell in love with it out here. This is a great state. And something was really cool. Last week for the football game, Georgia played Auburn, and it was a fucking madhouse. I've never seen a city react to college sports, college football, like they do here.
Oh, right.
Unbelievable. The best fans I've ever seen. I got to tell you, these Georgia fans, they rival Golden Knights fans in Las Vegas, Corey. It's unbelievable. But I've really fallen in love with Georgia, and I'm in the Lake Lanier area here, and the people who live here are just unbelievable, and I just have a love affair with Georgia these days. And it's amazing when you spend a long period of time like this in a different place, how much you learn about it. And I've just fallen in love with Georgia. Really cool here. So I got to tell you, it's an interesting time, and I want to share some information in a non-generic sense that I've gotten that I believe is extremely reliable, and I've learned a bunch of things, and they're interesting things, and they're public things, but they're things that really haven't been talked about so much. Did you guys know that the federal government, I guess under the guidance or suggestion or approval of the president, gave $1,900,000,000 to 3 pharmaceutical companies? Each one got $1.9 billion to guarantee 100 million doses to American citizens first through the federal government. So they got 100 million doses from one company. Then they went and wrote another check for $1.9 billion and got another 100 million from a second company. Then they wrote another check for $1.9 billion and got another 100 million from another company. Then they wrote a check to Nova, I forget the second half of their name, another pharmaceutical company, and they got $1.6 billion for 100 million. And then one other company got $1 billion something. So they have 5 different commitments at 100 million doses for each commitment.
Jeez.
Fascinating. And so the federal government has actually in this warp speed, and it's surprising to me that they don't talk about this stuff, because I found this out through medical community, that warp speed, that we are at a vaccine that is set for approval in November. All of the study looks fantastic. The numbers look great. It's actually a messenger RNA vaccine, which is a very, very safe vaccine format with a very high effective rate. And it's all really good news on a vaccine front. And they'll be finished with the full testing and all the full trials, no corners, nothing caught in November. Probably not by election, but in November. And then there's another one that clears just a few weeks after it. And I actually heard a panel of doctors who I have unbelievable immense respect for actually say, and I quote, "We will all be safe by January."
Wow.
And exactly, Corey, it almost brought tears to my eyes when I heard those words. I also learned a couple of other things that were interesting. One of the vaccines, and I won't mention any companies because I don't want to get any facts wrong. One of the vaccines travels at 20 below zero. 20 below zero is a temperature that most hospitals can deal with 20 below zero because they have other drugs that they have to hold at that temperature range, Corey. So pretty easy to distribute a vaccine at 20 below zero. They have the transportation to do it. The hospitals have the refrigeration to do it. Not an issue. One of the other vaccines from one of the other companies is a different construction, or actually 3 different types of vaccines. One is genetic, another is a protein, and they're different types of structures of the way they go at the vaccine. One of the other vaccines has to be stored at 70 below. That proposes challenges because 70 below is laboratory refrigeration, not traditional hospital refrigeration. So the government is working on all the transportation systems and the storing systems and everything to maintain the 70 below requirement with that vaccine. The other things that I've learned about the vaccine is the safety of it because of the type of vaccine that it is and the type of trials that have been done. So, as I sit here, and I've been talking to us all about this since March when I started, Corey, when production shut down March 13th. And I've been talking about the 50%. I think I talked about that before anyone. Corey, you were the one who did all the fact checking on that stuff, right?
Yeah, you've been talking about this for a while.
And I was right pretty much on every one of them, wasn't I?
Oh, yeah.
So can you imagine me, Corey, saying, "No, John, you weren't on the podcast."
Actually.
But actually I was.
Yeah.
So when you think now that we really are 90 days away from the end of this. Now, we've been through 7 months, Corey, and you've been great with your mask, and you've really changed your lifestyle during this a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, and even in the production that we do, in-house.
Yeah, doing it in my house and keeping a distance. And, Corey, we turn my home bar into a studio, and Corey comes and he sets everything up and he sprays everything and he wears his mask and he keeps the distance. But even away from me in your private life, and you're a young guy, you don't go to bars as much or restaurants. You've really changed your lifestyle, haven't you? So think about it. In 2 to 3 months, you're going to get a vaccine and you can say, holy shit, I go out there. Yeah. I'm not scared of this thing anymore. And for young people who fear it, or for older people who fear it, we really are coming out the other side of this thing. And I did a speech today, a V-note, as we call them, for the food service equipment convention. And I was talking about it. What I've been saying on Fox and MSNBC lately is that the first thing everybody's going to do after they get that vaccine is what, Corey? Go out to dinner, right? Go out to
dinner, yep.
Yep. So we're looking at some really, really exciting times ahead. But right now, we get nailed with another fucking bummer where the numbers are going up. And now New York, Mayor de Blasio, who, I could say that I could call him a jackass. I could call him stupid. But he's not stupid per se. Anybody who can be elected mayor of a city the size of New York is not an idiot. You got to grant them that.
Right.
When people say that the president, either side, no matter what year you pick, is an idiot, nobody who's an idiot becomes president of the United States. It just doesn't work that way. When you meet a guy who made every dollar himself and he's a billionaire, he's not a freaking idiot. So we use that word pretty loosely. But in the case of de Blasio, I don't think he's an idiot. But I think that the man has some type of a disconnect with reality. If you ever want to do something that's surprisingly entertaining, particularly if you don't live in New York, do a little YouTube on de Blasio and listen to the things that this man says. They are unbelievable. And honestly, about a year ago, he said a couple of things to me that were so outrageous, not to me, to everybody, that was so outrageous that nothing he has ever said has ever meant anything to me ever again. Because he's so fucking out there. So, and I'm not playing either side. This is the most unpopular mayor, I believe, in the history of New York. So he's equally hated by everyone. But Mayor de Blasio comes up with a plan. He's identified a couple of zip codes where the virus is showing an increase, and he wants to shut down non-essential businesses in just those zip codes. Years ago, I was going to open a business, a bar, in Tempe, Arizona, right by Arizona University of Arizona. And they had just implemented the new non-smoking laws. And what was interesting is the town, I don't know if it's a town or city, I don't recall, of Tempe, Arizona, illegalized smoking. But the next town over on both sides did not. So they stopped cigarette smoking by zip code. So let's say you smoked, Corey.
Okay.
And the bar in your town doesn't allow smoking anymore, but right around the corner in another zip code, there is smoking. What are you going to do?
I'm going to
You're
go the
right
other
around
bar.
the corner. Of course. So they didn't stop it. They just moved it. And it didn't stop until they illegalized it in a large enough mass area to make a difference. So think about COVID for a moment. Imagine if there was a zip code that people live in, and essentially in many cases work in, kids go to school in, they stay in their little neighborhood in very many cases. Those people have a little burst in COVID density. Now you tell them, okay, you're not allowed to go to the places in your own neighborhood anymore. We're shutting them all down. What are these people going to do, Corey?
They're traveling.
They're going to the next zip code.
Yeah.
So aren't we spreading in that sense?
Yeah,
So-
actually, yeah.
So it makes absolutely no sense to me. Now, if you publicize that these zip codes are hotspots, so you publish to all the people of New York, it would be advantageous to you or safe if you stay out of these zip codes, right? So if you're going to go to a grocery store, maybe don't go to the grocery store in that zip code, go to another, if you don't live there. But for the people who live there, sending them out of their zip code is about as asinine, emphasis on the first three letters of asinine, as one can possibly get. So I think the man is a moron. And I say it and I put it out there, and I really don't care what political affiliation he is. The things that he says, the choices that he makes, the negative impact that he has had on a wonderful city, my city that I grew up in, is astonishing to me. So as we enter this election season, I say to all of you, don't ever discount the power of local elections. And we all talk about the president, the vice president, senators, and Congress, and we're voting for this, and we love Schumer, and we hate Schumer, and we love this one, and we hate this one, and we blah, 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 whatever it might be. But the fact of the matter is, almost everything that has killed local business these past 6-7 months has been instituted by local government, not federal government. Understand, it's the governors that implement these changes, the local politicians that created these changes. So when you go to the polls this year, don't just vote down party lines for local elections, because I know many people did. I'm guilty. I did it myself. Years ago, I would research the big elections, but I didn't research the little ones. But it was the little ones that impacted me the most. So this time, if you're going to go vote, you have an opportunity to either create a safer environment, a more business-friendly environment, but you can affect a lot of change in your community through your local election. Things that the president, Congress, Senate can't do. So that's one of the big lessons that I've gotten out of COVID, Corey, is how much the choices of local government has impacted us. Look at Las Vegas. I like Governor Sisolak. The choices that he made is what impacted you, Corey, not the federal government, right?
That's true, yeah.
So everything that has impacted all of us happened at a state or local level. So let's pay attention to those local elections this year, because they can make a real difference in your quality of life, the success of your businesses, the way your businesses reopen, the kind of support they're going to get from local building departments, right? Local approvals, local business licensing, all of those kinds of things are regulated by the locals. Now, when I go to build a restaurant or produce a show in bar rescue, one locality is easy and great to work with, and they're fast and they're easy. And because they're so great, Corey, I have more money left over to put into the bar for my budget. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I go to another city. They're so difficult with the paperwork and the approvals and the time period. They take money out of the project that now I have less money to put into the bar for the person. So local government really, really matters. And that's the big lesson that we should all take from COVID, is how much local government has impacted us, and how much in a moment like this, it isn't about the federal government so much as it is about local government. For example, local governments determine how many hospital room beds there are going to be. Did you know that, Corey? That's something that's established by the states.
Huh.
And they do studies and they do density reports. So states have the amount of hospital beds that the governor's office and the state legislature determined. So they provided the tax credits and all of the various instruments to cause those hospital beds to happen and operate. They also determine what levels of PPE should be set up for each state and what inventories there should be in each state. They determine other medical resources and funds and relief funds and disaster funds, and all of this happens at a state level. It doesn't happen at a federal level. So next time we get those storms and you know, trees aren't cleaned up from the street, it isn't a federal government, it's local. So we can really change local government, because many people don't participate in local government at the level that they should. And this is an opportunity for us all to do it. But if you think about it, we've all been impacted far more by the local government these past 7 months than we have the federal government. Well, Taffer's Tavern's coming along, buddy. We passed our health inspection.
It is. I get all the pictures. Looks good.
Yeah, you haven't seen it yet, but you get to see all the pictures. What do you think, Corey?
Oh, it looks beautiful. I love it. Yeah.
I'm real excited about it. You know, on Bar Rescue, I always talk about layers of design. And a layer, you know, is wood. Another layer might be metal. Another layer might be stone. Another layer might be lighting or shadows or textures or different layers that you add to design. And I had a lot of fun doing Taffer's Tavern. It's a lot of fun when you do it for yourself, buddy. It makes it the most fun of all. Yeah. But we're now, I guess, about 2 weeks from opening. And the kitchen of the future is under lock and key. I won't show this to anybody. It is so freaking cool. All the equipment, and you've seen some of the pictures, Corey.
Yeah,
you've never seen a kitchen that looks like that before.
No,
it's really the kitchen of the future. So I'm really excited. So I'm not showing it to anybody. I'm flying Corey out. Our production team is gonna put together some content, and then we're gonna blitz it out. We're doing a bunch of news shows. We have a media tour because it is the restaurant of the future. So the media tour. We have a bunch of the news networks that are coming into tour to see the technologies in the kitchen of the future. And so I'm sure everybody will see it, and the pictures will be all over the place, and we'll post them online too when Taffer's Tavern opens. But, you know, last week we talked hockey, and it was interesting to talk, you know, with a legend, you know, from one of the last sports dynasties of all time. Talking with Trotz, Corey, it's amazing to win a championship 7 times and have them gunning for you more and more each time. It's incredible. But when you think about it, he had the ability to pull himself together when he was losing. And there are a lot of games and things that we talked about. Some of them didn't make the podcast or the pre-gaming broadcast that we did for the NHL about how he pulled himself up when he was down. And imagine being down 3-0 and then coming back and winning. How do we lift ourselves up when we're down? Well, think about the operators in New York for a second. All the business operators in New York, Corey. They now open up 25% inside. Not bad, right? At least it's a start.
Right.
Okay, so now I can see people outside and inside. Within weeks, it's going to get cold. So I'm going to lose the outside seating. So I'm going to wind up with 25% inside. Now I find out that they're talking about closing certain zip codes, and an audit was just completed. And this was a government audit. This is not a political exercise that said roughly 50% of all independent New York restaurants are going to close by the end of this pandemic. Now, I find it interesting that, first of all, that they make a statement like that. I disagree with that because I think it's going to be 6% more every month. And that's the one thing, Corey, that I always find interesting that's not in that research is that number is as of when. Right. Because if it was 50% on October 1st, then it certainly can't be 50% on December 1st. It's got to be higher, right? So with every month this goes on, those numbers have to increase. So I think we're at about 50%. I agree with that assessment, but I also think the number goes up about 6% every month. So there's thousands of restaurants in New York, and I'll remind everybody The restaurant industry has a million independent restaurants around the country. They're the largest non-government employer in the country with 17 million employees in the restaurant business. 70% of those restaurants are owned by people who own single units. These aren't corporations. 70% of restaurants are single unit owners. So these are small businesses in their complete essence, operated by people who live within the community it operates, hiring people who live within a community it operates, and serving people that live in a community it operates. This is not a company in Dallas doing a mail order catalog that goes out to the state of New York. This is completely local money, local owners, local employees, local customers. It is the epitome of a local small business. So we asked you guys online, what do you think? New York's going to lose 50% of its restaurants. The numbers are going up. How do you think this is impacting New York? How do you think this is going to impact where you live? And Corey, I think it's one of the biggest responses online we've ever gotten. We had over 100,000 responses or so across our platforms.
We did, yeah.
So this is a topic that you guys really jumped on. So I'm eager to talk to you all and see what you say. So I'm going to talk to Joseph from New York in a couple of minutes right after this. All right. So I wanted to hear what you guys think about this whole premise of 50% of the restaurants in New York are going to be lost. And I think in some places, Corey, that number even goes up much higher in smaller markets and smaller restaurants where they have less resources to go on. And I was really curious to hear what you guys think about the depth of this impact. Are you angry? Are you worried? Are you this? Are you an operator? Are you a customer? What do you feel? This is gutting the essence of our communities, the locally owned, locally staffed, and local consumer-based businesses. So first caller was Joseph in New York. And Joseph has been a bartender manager for over 20 years. Let's get him on the phone, Corey.
Hello.
Joseph, Jon Taffer here.
Yeah. Hey, John.
How you doing, man?
Very good. Pleasure to hear from you.
Good. Thank you, buddy. Are you from New York? Did you grow up in New York?
Grew up in New York, Brooklyn, born and bred. I currently reside in the 11223 zip code, which
That's
is
one of the
now
hot zip
currently, yeah.
Wow.
So it's been interesting.
I got to just say, for a little disclosure here, Joseph, my whole family's from Brooklyn, right? So I was actually born in Manhattan, but my father, everybody else is in Brooklyn from my family. So I can probably picture the street that you're on, my friend. So I can't believe, and I was just beating the hell out of de Blasio before I got you on the phone, just how stupid it is. And when you think about the fact that if you're in a hot zip code that has an increase in COVID, I could understand his concern. We might want to let people know in the city this is a hot zip code, so it isn't something that you want to go to if you can avoid it. But to take the people that live there and shut their businesses down, Joe, aren't you just going to go to the next zip code and do business there?
That's exactly what would happen. And the foolishness extends
doesn't that
beyond
spread it then?
Yeah. There's no rhyme or reason as to why he's shutting these businesses down. There is talk that he may backpedal on that and not shut some of the businesses, but just shut schools. And then the question arises, is shutting schools tied to the fact that the voting machines are in schools and that's where elections happen? So it's pretty scary, and de Blasio has obviously proven himself as a very inept leader. He's decimated our industry. The bar, restaurant, club industry has been flattened here, obviously. And, look.
And it was a great scene growing in Brooklyn, too, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, enormous.
Yep.
Especially in some of the areas that were kind of non-residential for a long time. The industrial areas of Brooklyn have kind of bloomed, and now, that bloom has been killed off. But, one of the essential comforts as humans is found in gathering, in the company of others. And obviously, we're social creatures by nature. Getting drinks with friends, listening to live music, blowing off steam on the dance floor. That now has been taken away from us. And there are so many people that feel that it was done arbitrarily, capriciously by these inept politicians, and that resurrecting it is going to be harder. I mean, in essence, the bar business is going to be a return to zero. You know,
I had the
followed what you
opportunity,
said,
Joe.
you know, obviously. Mhm.
Good. I had a call, and you know, I'm quite vocal on some of the news channels, and I did have a phone call with a congressional committee a couple of weeks ago, and they called me to ask what, you know, we thought the right stimulus package elements would be. And I really thought it was pretty terrific that a congressional committee was calling myself and other business leaders to really get specifics. And nobody's talked about inventory credits. We've talked about payroll credits. We've talked about rent credits. They've talked a little bit about utility credits, you know, sort of like the PPP plan that we just had. But they've never talked about inventory credits to start up an inventory. They've never talked about time period. The program that they had on the table, which was actually Pelosi's program, ended at the end of the year. That isn't going to do shit for us. It's got to carry through to longer. You know, Joe, I've learned through my work with hospitals, I'm on a board of one, that we will be out of this in January. We will. We will have vaccines, and we will be out of this. Now, the issue becomes who survives and who doesn't. I believe that the first thing that happens, Joe, after we get a vaccine is people are going to go out to dinner, man. They're going to go out for a drink. They're going to go out again. So guys like yourself, who are the heart and soul of our business, let me put this point in front of you. There's going to be vacancies all over the city that are completely built out. They're going to have bars, they're going to have kitchens in them, and they're going to go bankrupt, and they're going to close. And in Brooklyn, there's going to be hundreds of them. Guys like you, who are the heart and soul of our industry, you should start putting together a little money. Because when this ends, you'll be able to cut a deal, go into one of those existing built-out operations, reface it for a few dollars, and put yourself into business as a result of this. So I'm putting a different kind of idea in your head, buddy. But there's landlord deals that can be made. There's places that are completely built out and have right down to silverware in them. So a guy like you who loves this business, when this ends in the next 60 to 90 days, you could be an owner out of this.
Yeah,
I'm saying there's a good ending for some people in this. And for the people who act now, I see a real opportunity for a guy like you to come out of this in a better place than you went into it, in a strange way. Not that there's any good in this at all, but there is some if you look hard enough. So I wanted to share that. I mean,
look, I agree with you 100%. I think streamlining and having a damage plan is an important part of it. I do see new money entering the industry, people with good ideas and good value. And I think there's a few things that have to change that some people haven't touched upon, including some of the insurance regulations, you know, incentives as far as the liquor authority implementing a sanitizing plan that's sound, and not just all over the road, you know, rent reductions and lease negotiations, and being able to buy direct from the bars and restaurants without, you know, continuing sidewalk service, meaning takeaway service and so forth. I mean, you know, people should be cognizant of the fact that using third-party vendors to get deliveries will hurt the bars and restaurants significantly, because they sometimes charge up to 30%.
It's unaffordable.
Of a fee. You know, maybe
they're
even
the only person making money. Yeah, that's true. So I think those are all powerful things.
Could be an issue. Yeah, I mean, spirit companies.
I wrote an op-ed Joe, I wrote an op-ed in Fortune magazine a few weeks ago. I'm sure you guys can find it online, about the whole delivery system and how that needs to be kept, and how there can be safety cups. And I could say, you know what, Joe, you're allowed to do cocktails to go, but you got to put a safety seal on the cup. Right. So I know that it isn't opened in transit. And that's a little special sticker that you put on it. There's ways to do this in a way that the industry can deliver, but yet it can be done in a responsible way. And our industry has proven responsibility for a long, long time. We don't get people sick as a matter of consequence. We are not irresponsible with alcohol. Sure, there's a few in any business who are dirtbags. You could say a percentage of veterinarians in a country are dirtbags, right, Joe? So every business has them. Yeah. But we as an industry are good at this. And we've got this if they give us the right to do it. So I hear you, buddy, and I'm feeling 100%. For you in New York. But you know, what is
right now I'm on the go ahead.
What is, I got to ask you this with a smile on my face, what is the popularity of your mayor right now in New York? Do you know?
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, I mean, you know, I've yet to find someone who's admitted that they even voted for him. Not once, but twice. You know,
it's a point of shame.
he's decimated a lot of special interests here, and obviously the city is not looking what it looked like a couple of years ago. There's an extraordinarily large amount of graffiti and degradation and homelessness and problems, and and COVID just added to all of that. So I mean, he's got a lot of soul searching to do once this is over and done with, because I've not seen destruction of this industry. I mean, outside of prohibition, what can you name that decimated us into this capacity?
Nothing. There's nothing that's ever happened like this in our history, for sure. And it's isolated certain industries. The movie theater industry is right there with us, Joe. They're taking the same hits that we are. And, we have a chance of coming back before they do. In some states, they're treating bars and restaurants differently. If you're a bar that serves food, you can't open. But if you're a restaurant that serves liquor, you can. I mean, it's just complete freaking insanity.
It just seems so arbitrary. Yeah.
And then the restaurants become bars at night, and the bars can't open. So there's a lot of injustice in this thing, and unfortunately, there was a lot of panic.
And the regulation, it's very, very hard to regulate any of this because the rules are being made on the fly. So it almost becomes more dangerous to a certain extent. Yes.
And they change along the way, of course. And what other thing I learned is how little we knew about this freaking thing when it started. That they thought this, then they thought that, then they thought this, then they thought that. So even when they were honest with us, the rules kept changing because the science and the knowledge kept changing. Joe, one New Yorker to another, buddy, I could probably talk to you for hours. Turn this into something good for you. Figure out a way to make this work for you, buddy. Look for some locations.
Well,
maybe you can get,
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well, regardless of what they try to scare us with as far as the virus is concerned. I mean, my wife is an RN. She's been on the front line. She's been exposed several times, and she's gotten through it. The virus is most certainly real, and people have died, and we can't be afraid to continue on and move forward. And that's what they're kind of suppressing in us, is our entrepreneurial spirit and the spirit to move forward on this. I mean, as of March 18th, I was forced to close the bartending school that we own and run. And we were shut down for close to, 4 months. And we finally resurrected it. And we were very pleasantly surprised to hear the phone ringing with people saying, look, I want to be a bartender. I'm interested in bartending, even though that the industry is suffering right now a little bit. We know that it's going to come back. And that really helped to push me over the edge to work harder and get this running again and moving again. So,
I used to own 3 bartending schools. Joe, I used to own 3 bartending schools.
That's
amazing. When I was in my 20s,
California?
When I was in my 20s, I owned Bartenders Academy that was based in Washington, D.C., and we had 3 schools. It was a 40-hour program. We had a wet bar in the school. We had all colored fluids, right, with all paint and soap to make bubbles, and everything was. It was a complete functioning bar with a soda gun and ice machines, but no spirits, all colored fluids. The model. And 40-hour program. We could do it daily, weekly, overnight. In 1 week, we had the government loan programs and everything in place, and we would run our TV commercials. I even remember my commercial, Joe. Are you tired or bored with your current job? Are you unemployed or just need to make extra money? Did you know that in 40 short hours I could teach you to be a bartender? And I remember doing the commercials, the first thing I ever did on television. I made a lot of money in the bartending school business. It's a great way for people to enter the industry. It really, really is. And there's some shitty schools out there, of course, Joe, but I support the good ones. I'm guessing you are one of the good ones, buddy. But I support the good schools out there that really provide people with a way to enter the industry with some knowledge. So I hope your school comes back.
No, I appreciate it. We've been around a long time. Opened in 1969. The original owner was Jack Tiano. I don't know if that rings a bell, but I believe that you
Jack
guys
Tiano. Did you know Glenn Rodano?
Sure.
Well, I knew Jack Tiano
Glenn
quite
was
well.
Jack's partner.
Of course he was. My first entrance in the bartending school. I'm going to tell people something that I've never told this story before. When I was young, I got a job teaching at American Bartender School at 369 Lexington Avenue in Manhattan. And I got a job teaching in that school, which was owned by Jack Tiano, run by Glenn Rodano.
Correct.
And that's, I worked for them. And I was a salesperson, a teacher, and then a school director. And then I opened schools in Detroit and around the country for Jack. This is when I was in my young 20s, Joe. And so I was a young kid, and I had the sales team, and we had the closing offices, of course, and the whole 9 yards. I'm sure you're running it the same. And we had our books and broken into the cream drinks and Jack train. There was no video in those days. And then after I left Jack in American Bartender School, I went to Washington, which is a city he wasn't in, and opened up Bartenders Academy. So that's funny, buddy. We have worked for the same people over the years.
Yeah. I took over the school, some years ago, and Jack retired, and we are American Bartender School. It's barschool.com. We train close to 1,000 bartenders a year, normally. I don't know what impact that's going to have on the several months that we were closed, but we're looking forward to, providing the education and giving them the knowledge. A lot of people have certain, things to say about bartending school in the sense that, well, it's not really quality education. You're just learning basic drinks. But I try to instill in these young bartenders the things that make money for the owners and managers that hire them. How to upsell, how to expedite, how to pour accurately, reconciling money accurately, doing the things that you push on your show and you help owners and managers understand. So that's the goal. And the model is very much
also a comfort you develop behind the bar, Joe, holding a bottle, making a drink, using the equipment, understanding the processes. Sure, you go to work from a bartending school, the recipes might change, the job might be a little more, but you know what it feels like to be behind a bar, how to hold a bottle, how to mix something, how to shake something. You got the motions down, the mechanics down, right? You know all the basics. So I'm a big proponent of what you do, buddy. I'm really supportive of it. So I'm glad you got to throw your website out to give yourself a little plug. But for anybody who's thinking of joining the bar business, it's a great way to start. And people call me all the time and say, John, I got money. I want to open a bar. What should I do? Well, the first thing you should do is be a bartender so that you know how the hell the heart of the business works, and then open a bar.
Right.
So, do it at school. Go to bartending school, get a bartending job, learn the business, and then open your bar. Anyway, Joe, lots of luck to you, buddy. It was great to talk.
I appreciate the conversation, John. Thank you.
Take care, buddy. I really relate to a guy like Joseph, in bartending school and in the business as well. But what's interesting is, when you hear 50% of the businesses, restaurants are going to close in New York, and you hear there are 25% occupancy, New York has some of the highest restaurant rents in the country. Now, I have a lot of friends that own restaurants in New York, and in almost every case, they're trying to get out of New York City. They'll come to Vegas in a heartbeat. They'll go to Florida in a heartbeat. I have one who's moving his restaurant from Manhattan to Charlotte, because the only person who makes money is the landlord. So normal restaurants will pay about 10% of their revenue on rent. In New York, it's 20-30%. So you're struggling to make a living in the first place. At 25% occupancy, Corey, you can't pay the rent in New York. End of story. That's the deal. None of them can be successful at 25%. So this is a ticking time bomb, and we're going to lose more and more every week. And it's interesting, Corey, I got an email from Eric Z in Los Angeles, who wrote, how about a federally subsidized low-interest loan program serving, quote, collectives of furloughed hospitality employees to both develop their own group wealth strategies and opportunities, while simultaneously establishing community growth, not in New York, but across the state. So what he's suggesting is that the federal government put a low-interest loan program in place, which, by the way, exists, and they're small business loans, right? So this SBA loans. So those exist already. But he's saying that there would be collective of furloughed hospitality employees to open up their own programs. I have a real issue with the whole premise of, quote, collectives. Corey, do you want to be partners with strangers you've never met before?
No, I'm good.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You want a blue napkin, they want a pink napkin. They want this, you want that. How do you manage it? How do you do it? You're starting to break into this realm of group socialistic approaches to things. Now, the government shouldn't be subsidizing collectives of people. They should be subsidizing businesses that make sense. I'm all for that. So, Eric, I think, a low-interest loan program that now focuses on the restaurant or hospitality industry that says, give us a business plan, show us that you know how to do this, and we'll give you a special low-interest loan or no-interest loan to help you get your business started. That makes sense to me. Does that make sense to you, Corey?
Yeah, it does.
Now, what if we changed it and said, don't bring me a business plan. I don't need to know you know how to do this. Just as long as you have a collective of people, I'll give you the money. You think that's going to work? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You see, we have to give the money where it has a chance of success. So I'm all for the premise of federal programs to support the restart of the restaurant industry. I'm there. I'm struggling with the whole premise of collectives on that one. But, a Seamus in the Bronx said, I'm not sure it's the beginning of another shutdown, but this staggered reopening has been a disaster since day one. Bars have a small chance of surviving Manhattan unless you're incredibly vigilant and creative. He's right. And right now, all of these bars have lost their loyal customers. Everything has changed. We're back to square one. But I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again, Corey. In the next 60 days, we are going to have a vaccine. People are going to take that vaccine. Once they realize it's safe, more people are going to take it, Corey. And you know how you read, a third of America is not going to take the vaccine? Well, once the other 2/3 of the country take the vaccine and they realize that there's no side effects, you think they'll take it or you think they'll stay home?
I think they'll
take the freaking vaccine.
Yeah.
Of course they will. They're not idiots.
Right.
People aren't stupid. So they're being cautious. At this moment, they wouldn't take it. Well, at this moment, I'm not sure I would take it either without knowing what the hell it is. So, it's going to change. There's going to be vacant restaurants, vacancies all across America when this ends. There's going to be people eager to lend money. There's going to be capital groups that are looking to reinvest in these new businesses. Yep. Retail, as we know, it's not going to come back in a mall sense because of Amazon and all the online buying. But experience-based businesses, what I call location-based entertainment, LBEs, which are bowling centers, movie theaters, children's entertainment facilities, game rooms, concert venues, restaurants, bars, location-based entertainment is going to come back because it's driven by experience. And I completely believe that. And I completely believe that the restaurant industry will almost completely normalize by next summer. And I've been pretty right on the forecasts I've made now. So when people say this is decimated and it's never going to come back, after the riots in Detroit, it took that city 10, 15 years to come back from riots and all of that, but it did. New York and all of these markets, we're talking about landlords getting new tenants who want to open these businesses with enthusiasm. Those people will step up and they will open these businesses with enthusiasm. And I think the restaurant industry is going to come back. That's my belief. So, we had our count up in this pandemic. Now we're going to count down. And, Corey, let's say that October 1 is 90 days. So we're down now to what, 84 days. And I think we're sort of in a countdown mode of when we start to see this vaccine coming out. And that's how I'm looking at it. So I can't wait to talk to those landlords and to do those deals. What about you? What about businesses that you want to get into? When I was talking to Joe, he's going to try to figure out how to make this an opportunity. Well, I'm going to try to figure out how to make this an opportunity for me. If I do, I get to hire people, create jobs, create income, create an experience, bring a business back to a community. These are all great reasons to do it and make a shitload of money. So what are you going to do to make this good for you? What are you going to do to dig out of this? So work on a plan. Work on your plan. Can you raise a few dollars and take over a restaurant that has closed because the last owner ran out of resources, but it was a good restaurant? If it wasn't for the pandemic, it would still be open. It's got a bar. It's got all the equipment, the refrigeration, the ice machines. Some of them have the plates and the silverware. Go cut a deal with the landlord. Be ready to seize your future because this thing is coming close to an end. And I'll talk to you guys next week. See you then.
Do you want to see more of this podcast? Then hit subscribe right now. No excuses.